Hi, my name is S.A. Bachman, and I live in Los Angeles, California. And I choose to identify myself as a socially engaged artist, and that is how I frame my courses as well. I try to understand the forces that affect and constitute my daily life, and over time, my creative process has changed from an art practice primarily based in aesthetics to one that's primarily based in dialectics. So for me, social practices are about examining how the public and the private are inextricably intertwined. And I would say that my practice reflects my feminism in style as well as substance. There's a feminist writer, Carol Schneidwin, and she once wrote that feminism is taught through process as well as formal content. And I think that's something that I hold dear in the classroom and in the studio, as well as in the world. One thing that informs me is that as someone who began art making as a photographer, I share David Trent's view, who says that photography is not merely a medium, but a set of social transactions. And that's something that has stuck with me from my time as a photographer, and I have brought it forward into my socially engaged practice. From the beginning, the work of Think Again, one central aspect of our mission has been to support people in the trenches, people who work day in and day out trying to ameliorate injustice. And so that notion of actually serving other people doing the work has been central to my thinking. And so in terms of collaborative projects, maybe an interesting one to mention is a project from 1999 called Economic Boom for Whom. And I was thinking about this earlier today too, because in your question that we'll get to later about what are the difficulties, one of the difficulties can be being discouraged. And it's been interesting to look back at a project done in 1999 that could have gone up at any moment. In fact, we did reuse materials from that project when Occupy Wall Street was going on. But I'm getting off on a tangent. So, Economic Boom for Whom was a collaborative project where Think Again worked with United for a Fair Economy. And United for a Fair Economy is a nonprofit organization, and their mission is to raise awareness about income and wealth inequity. So Think Again designed a series of billboards that were asking the question of who was benefiting from Bill Clinton's economic boom. And the buildings underscored the reality that wages were falling while wealth for the richest people were growing exponentially. So again, as I said, Occupy Wall Street 101. And so there were 3 billboards that went up initially, and they all had this tagline of Economic Boom for Whom. The billboards were really strategically located throughout the city in specific commuter areas so that they were being seen in areas where there was gentrification happening and where communities were coming in and having to leave. So United for a Fair Economy, however, needed the billboards to reflect messages of their organization. There was information about what the current living wage was, all kinds of data that, again, relates to that income disparity that we're so aware of now. But Think Again ended up being more interested in pushing the criticism. We certainly at that time liked to be a bit in one's face. And so when we were collaborating with UFE, there was a certain respect that we had for what they were doing, and we saw it as, again, kind of serving their mission. So the billboards were a little more tame than we would normally have done. So when the billboards came down, we decided to do a kind of more biting commentary or a more biting assault on gentrification independently. And so we devised a companion wheat paste poster that was titled White Blight. And it used the same imagery as Economic Boom for Whom, and it had the tagline, Economic Boom for Whom. But White Blight sort of called out the beneficiaries of economic prosperity. It asked about community revitalization and how that masks the real phenomenon of gentrification. So those posters went up in Boston and San Francisco. They went up mainly on construction housing for luxury lofts. And I always like to say that lofts are not always a problem. And so these were really site-specific to locations where they were a problem. And this was a really interesting time in both Boston and San Francisco where the gentrification boom was booming. I think to try to keep oneself going and doing the work can really be challenging at times. And that spins back around to the economic boom and the Queer Youth Manifesto that I mentioned, that it on one level we know that things take a lot of time. On another level, it is disheartening when you look at something that you did 15 years ago and you could put it up on a wall now and it's every bit as on point as it was then, because certain things have not changed, or in the case of income inequity, things have actually become more severe. And Queer Youth Manifesto, which is from 1997, is still the most comprehensive queer youth rights document that's easily available. And I find that disheartening, too, that there has not been yet something more comprehensive done by people of a generation who are younger than I am. I'm pondering education a lot of late and the institutionalization of social practice in the academy. And because I have this very conflicted relationship about that, of for so many years fighting to have that be recognized, and on other levels, now that it's happened, seeing some of the limitations with things being institutionalized, and how sometimes when something is not institutionalized, you can play with the system. For me, it is really necessary to demand, again, I feel, again, these are ongoing things that seem as though you've made the progress in the academy and then suddenly it's taken away. But I think it's necessary to demand an interdisciplinary model that is all-encompassing. And by that I mean one where traditional academic and studio disciplines truly weave and they intersect and they overlap, but in substantive ways, that they're fully interwoven into the overall fabric of the curriculum.